Hi, my name is Montana Ray, and I'm so grateful to Poet's House. And the protocol was to read a poem by another poet and then read one of my poems. And I was thinking about whose poem I'd like to read today, and I wanted to read someone I'd met at Poet's House. And when I was thinking through all the people that I had met there, I realized what an amazing gathering point it was for me as a young poet, and how many really diverse, what a diverse group of people and poems and styles. And, you know, I was so lucky to encounter at Poet's House. So I'm just going to go through a couple of them, a couple of the people that I met there, and then I'm going to read a poem by one of the people who was in a fellowship program there with me. So first, I wanted to say that I met Mina Alexander there, and that it was an amazing reading organized by Gutum Datta, and it was with Shubhad Sarkar, and Anne Waldman read an amazing poem about the Anthropocene, and Bob Holman read a piece, and I got invited to read, and I remember writing in my bio something like, I'm a feminist poet, and they kind of made fun of me about that. And then I wrote my poems and they were like, oh yeah, feminist poetry, great. And so I remember that Mina Alexander came up to me afterwards and talked to me about, just starting academia and how that was going with my poetry. And it was just so beautiful of her to have a curiosity in me as a young poet, and her poems were so beautiful and her voice was so beautiful. And then she actually passed away not too long after that reading. And I just remember feeling so lucky that I had that moment to meet her and listen to her work. Okay, so I'm going to read one of the poems by one of the people who was in the fellowship with me in the Emerging Poets Fellowship program, who has fully emerged, as have all of the people in that program. Like, they're really bright lights of the literary scene, so it's very exciting. And this is by Ocean Vuong. It's called Essay on Craft. Because the butterfly's yellow wing, flickering in black mud, was a word stranded by its language. Because no one else was coming, and I ran out of reasons. So I gathered fistfuls of ash, dark as ink, hammered them into marrow, into a skull thick enough to keep the gentle curse of dreams. Yes, I aimed for mercy, but came only so close as building a cage around the heart, shutters over the eyes. Yes, I gave it hands, despite knowing that to stretch that clay slab into 5 blades of light, I would go too far. Because I too needed a place to hold me. So I dipped my fingers back into the fire, pried open the lower face until the wound widened into a throat, until every leaf shook silver with that god-awful scream. I was done. It was human. Before I did the fellowship program, I took a class with Lisa Jarneau, and I remember in the class she had us look up etymologies of some of the words in our poems, and I picked the word mango and spent the afternoon looking up the etymology of mango. And it was such this weird cracking open of oh yeah, poet. It's not like an intellectual thought at this point, but as a young person, the idea that food had this genealogy and it traveled everywhere, and really it was this kind of nourishing source of my poetry. And I ended up putting recipes in my first book of poetry. Another actually food related anecdote, Jean Valentine told me, we had a one-on-one conference during my Poets House fellowship, and she told me to write from the almond in my chest. And I was like, what is the almond in my chest? And I kept thinking about this. And at the time I was writing poems that were in the shape of mandorlas or vaginas, really. And so I was like, is that her way of saying right from the vagina in your chest? I didn't know, but I just felt like it was just so interesting. The amount of wisdom and kind of strange and beautiful assignments that found their way to me through Poets House was really exciting. Okay, and this is a poem from my first book. It was called Guns and Butter. It is called Guns and Butter. And this is a poem. It's actually, I've been thinking a lot about, my family's migration south after the US Civil War, and just manifest destiny in this kind of having this Southernly as well as Western movement. And so I think about this poem sometimes now with the current project I'm working on. Okay, so it's called United States of Montana. Men live in Montana, where air is healthful, men go. To Colorado, near Montana in the mountains, sick men go on hot afternoons. Men work in factories, and Kansas is in the newspapers, talked of by men. Idaho thou hast, and far away, Singapore, Honolulu, Brazil, Alabama. In Montana, men eat and have bodies which pain them. Kansas has 2 men pained by their eating. The stomach of man, a weak affair. Men work, suffer, are a little ugly. Mountains are in Montana, and the afternoon is strange, haunting, awful. Hear the buzzing in the hot grass coming from the live things. Thank you so much, Poets House. I really appreciate it. It was such a fun time to spend the afternoon thinking about poetry, and it made me really miss Poets House, and I look forward to the reopening.